Okay, gotta admit, REITs initially didn't scream fascinating to me. But you sent this article in, so clearly you're onto something. And that's what we do here, right? Dig into these kind of niche topics and see what we can unearth.
And with REITs, you'd be surprised at the gems waiting to be discovered, especially in the current economic landscape.
No more secrets then, lay it on us. What are REITs? This article defines them as a way to invest in real estate through the stock market. Kind of like, I don't know, buying into a rent-collecting apartment without the landlord hassles.
The really neat thing about REITs is they often hold a really diverse portfolio of properties. It's not about going all in on a single apartment building. It's more like owning a tiny slice of everything. The article actually highlights this built-in diversification as a huge advantage for managing risk, especially when the market gets bumpy.
Right, yeah, diversification is key. Speaking of insights, there's something in this article I found super intriguing. It suggests that how REITs perform can actually give us clues about the bigger economic picture. Like it's some secret code to understanding the financial world.
Absolutely. Interest rates, for instance, have a massive influence on how REITs perform. So if we're seeing REITs doing well, it could indicate a healthy economy with good lending conditions. Conversely, if REITs are struggling, that might be an early warning sign of broader economic trouble brewing.
It's like getting a sneak peek at the economic forecast. Okay, so the article delves into some of the nitty-gritty details about REITs. And one thing that jumped out at me was this 90% profit distribution rule. So basically, REITs are required to pay out the vast majority of their profits as dividends to shareholders. Now, someone like me who loves passive income, that's music to my ears.
It's definitely a huge draw for income-focused investors. Imagine a steady stream of dividend checks rolling in, potentially even more reliable than some stock dividends, as the article points out. The trade-off, however, is that this 90% rule can limit a REIT's ability to reinvest profits, and that can impact their ability to grow at a faster rate.
So it's about finding that sweet spot, balancing current income with the potential for future growth. And this is where the article's comparison between REITs and just buying real estate directly really clicked for me. I mean, not many people can just go out and buy an apartment building. But REITs, they're way more accessible.
You're spot on. REITs offer an accessibility that's just not possible with direct real estate ownership. Plus, there's the liquidity factor. Imagine trying to quickly sell a shopping mall versus selling shares of a REIT on the open market. It's a night and day difference.
And here's where it gets even cooler. The article points out that REIT isn't a catch-all term. There are actually different types, each with its own kind of, like, investment personality.
Absolutely. You've got your residential REITs focused on apartments and housing. Then there are commercial REITs, which might own things like office buildings or shopping centers. And let's not forget the more niche categories, like healthcare REITs, which invest in hospitals and medical facilities.
Right. And speaking of healthcare, the article mentions that healthcare REITs have been getting a lot of buzz lately. Makes sense with the aging population and the growing demand for healthcare services. It's like owning a piece of that trend, but without having to, actually run a hospital.
And we can't overlook industrial REITs. They've seen significant growth recently, driven by the rise of e-commerce and all those massive warehouses popping up everywhere.
Oh, that's interesting. It's like owning a tiny piece of the online shopping boom. I guess the takeaway here is each type of REIT comes with its own unique set of opportunities and risks.
Precisely. That's why doing your due diligence is crucial. You really need to grasp the ins and outs of each REIT sector. And speaking of which, the article mentions something pretty interesting. It highlights how global fund managers are increasingly adding REITs to their portfolios. That suggests a growing confidence in the sector. Definitely something to keep an eye on.
It's like getting a little insider tip from the pros. Okay, so let's say you're interested in REITs, but maybe not ready to dive into picking individual properties or sectors just yet. The article talks about something called REIT ETFs, and he uses this great analogy, a REIT buffet. Tell me more about that.
So REIT ETFs, or exchange-traded funds, they let you invest in a basket of REITs all at once. Instant diversification. So instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, say, just office REITs, you're spreading your risk across a bunch of different REITs. Could be office, residential, industrial, you name it.
Like having a taste of everything at the buffet. And speaking of variety, the article gives us a few specific examples of REIT ETFs, VNQ, SCHH, and XLRE. Won't bore you with all the ticker symbols, but the key takeaway is each of these ETFs has a slightly different flavor. VNQ, for instance, is the largest and most established, while SCHH boasts the lowest fees, and XLRE focuses specifically on the S&P 500, which means it tends to invest in larger, more well-established companies.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it emphasizes a critical point. Not all REIT ETFs are created equal. It's like anything else in investing, you got to look under the hood. Don't just assume all REIT ETFs are the same. Examine their specific holdings, their investment strategies, their risk profiles. Make sure they align with your overall financial goals.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? REITs 101, different flavors, even dipping our toes into those REIT ETFs. So much good stuff in that article.
The goal is to connect those dots, right? See the bigger picture and make smarter choices. Speaking of connections, remember when we were talking about interest rates and their impact on REITs?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the article mentioned something kind of interesting.
Oh, right. It said that historically REITs tend to do well after an interest rate hike cycle ends.
Exactly, and we've seen the Fed raising rates for a while now, but there's a growing feeling that this cycle might be coming to a close.
So does that mean REITs could be ready for a comeback?
It's a definite possibility. If interest rates stabilize, it could create a much better environment for REITs, potentially leading to more investors jumping in and, growth in the sector.
That's really interesting. I love how this deep dive not only gave us a good understanding of REITs, but also got us thinking about these bigger questions. I'm definitely going to be watching REITs closely in the coming months. Who knows, maybe there are some hidden opportunities out there just waiting to be discovered.
Knowledge is power, right? The more you know about different investments and how they're affected by the economy, the better prepared you'll be to navigate the market.
Couldn't agree more. Well, to our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive into the world of REITs have been insightful, maybe even inspired you to do a little more digging of your own. And hey, you find any other cool articles, you know where to send them. Until next time, keep those brains engaged and stay curious out there.